Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our second LionSide chat. My name is Matt Hagee, and I'm the Sports Information Director here at Albright College. I'm thrilled for everyone that is here to be able to join us today. This was a program that was originally debuted in October 2020 with the Albright College President's Council. The program is designed to help alumni and donors engage with our college leaders and stay up to date on important issues here at Albright College. Today, we will be discussing all things Albright athletics. We currently have 24 varsity teams on campus, and we hope to give you some insight on the state of the department. Before I introduce our panelists for our program, I would like to address some quick housekeeping items. Today's event is presented in a Zoom webinar format. Although there are actually over 50 Albright community members joining us today, everyone's video and microphones are muted, so you will just be able to see myself and our panelists. I'll start off our conversation today by asking a series of questions that we are often asked about, and then we will open the program to your questions. Your questions can be submitted at any point during the event, but will not be answered until the end. To submit a question, please click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will address as many questions as we can later in the hour. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our four panelists for today's LionSide chat. Our first guest speaker is Albright College co-athletic director and head men's basketball coach, Rick Ferry. Rick is in his 20th year coaching the Albright College men's basketball team and has served as the co-athletic director since 2008. Rick has led the men's basketball program to a pair of MAC Commonwealth Tournament championships in 2005 and 2010. The team has also made 3 NCAA tournament appearances in 2005, 2018. Rick has also been named MAC Commonwealth Coach of the Year 3 times during his tenure at Albright. Welcome, Rick Ferry. Our next guest is co-athletic director and head women's basketball coach, Janice Luck. A 1996 graduate of Albright College, Janice is in her 19th year coaching the Albright women's basketball team and has also served as the co-athletic director alongside Rick since 2008. Janice led the Albright women's basketball team to its first MAC Commonwealth title in program history in 2016. The team has qualified for the NCAA tournament 5 times in her time as head coach, and Janice has been named MAC Commonwealth Coach of the Year 4 times. Welcome, Janice Luck. Our third guest is Albright College Assistant Athletic Director and head women's lacrosse coach, Jen Willis. Jen has led the Albright women's lacrosse program since its debut season in 2012. As she enters her 10th season at the helm, she has led the team to 5 straight MAC Commonwealth tournament appearances. In addition to her head coaching duties, Jen serves as the senior women administrator for the department and was recently promoted to assistant athletic director in fall of 2020. Welcome, Jen Willis. And our final guest speaker is Albright College head football coach, John Marska. John is in his 14th year as head coach of the Albright football team. John has led the program to a pair of MAC championships in 2008 and 2015, and also to a pair of NCAA tournament appearances in 2009 and 2015. He was named the Nike NCAA Division III Coach of the Year in 2009 and MAC Coach of the Year in 2015. John also serves as the team's offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Welcome, John Marska. Some of the topics we will be discussing today include navigating through the COVID-19 pandemic, recruiting, and what the future holds for the department. I'd like to start off here with a question for Rick. Rick, how important is athletics to Albright, and what about Division III makes athletics different here?
Thank you, Matt, and welcome everybody. Athletics plays a very important role at Albright, and a very large role, and is truly ingrained in our culture. Student athletes represent about 30% of our student body, and the athletes are involved in all areas of campus. As an NCAA Division III institution, we prioritize academics while still placing great importance on athletics and the student athlete experience. The general overriding rule in D3 is that the student athlete does not receive any preferential treatment over any other student. We believe in this and abide by this rule. We find that it leads to more freedom and a deeper college experience for our athletes. It's not uncommon to see members of our sports teams in all kinds of roles on campus. Just the other day, I ran into one of our women's basketball players giving a campus tour to a prospective student. You see members of the team on the theater stage or serving in leadership roles in the Student Government Association. So they're involved all over campus. They're students and they're also athletes.
Thank you, Rick. I'd like to direct my next question to both John and Jen. Obviously, recruiting athletes who want to thrive academically here at Albright is a year-round activity for coaches and in all sports. So how has recruiting been different during the pandemic? And more importantly, what hasn't changed?
Sure. So a lot of the pieces to recruiting have actually remained the same, at least when it comes to the part about communication. If anything, the pandemic has taken the plain old phone call and has spun it so that FaceTime with recruits isn't such an odd way to communicate. Many of my first time connections with recruits, other than emails, have been in the form of a FaceTime. And that's really a nice touch rather than just hearing a voice over the phone. Today's technology allows us to put a face to the name and the voice, see their facial expressions and so forth. And sometimes they get fun and interesting. For instance, when their furry family members are suddenly in the background of the screen. I know personally, my Great Dane, Sergeant Pepper, she's popped into a few FaceTime calls and has added a more personal touch. It's a nice touch for recruits and their families to see and hear when you start talking about your home life and the values that you have in your personal life that tend to also carry over to your program and team. But at this point, when kids come to visit campus, they need to be fully masked the entire time, and social distancing is encouraged when on the tours and such. That almost just seems normal these days. So you could almost say that that aspect hasn't changed all at the same time. As far as what hasn't changed, we're fortunate in the lacrosse world where tournaments and such really never skipped a beat, and they've been ongoing this entire time. I know during this pandemic, I've stated that I felt most normal while at a summer or a fall tournament recruiting. It almost seems like the main difference is being masked while in attendance at a tournament. But again, just like I mentioned, when kids come on campus for tours and such, that's just part of the new norm. I do know, though, for the indoor sports, it's been very different for them. They've been recruiting over a computer screen while watching the live stream club basketball, for instance. But all in all, regardless of indoor or outdoor sports, I think the recruits have adapted really well. If their high school teams didn't play, they got creative with videos that they took in their backyards, the videos they passed along to show what type of student athlete they are, et cetera. I think the coaches, regardless of whether recruiting in person or over a computer screen, have made the best of what COVID-19 has brought us.
And John, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this really just builds upon what Coach Willis just talked about, but just like every single industry out there, we've had to adapt to the reality. We've had to adapt to the restrictions set by, federal government, state government, local officials, our institutional restrictions, and those of every state and every high school that we're dealing with. But when we first started, this whole thing we talked about this. Teams and coaches and student athletes through this pandemic who would improvise, adapt, and overcome were the ones that were going to be successful, and those who don't, would be the ones who would pay that price. And so we just continued to adapt. We've had several virtual visits, to campus because early on, especially, we couldn't have in-person visits. We've really increased the number, the quantity, the frequency of phone calls, one-on-one Zooms, the use of text messaging, the use of social media, in recruiting, because that's what we had to do to adapt. We weren't able to have any group visits. So the visits that we were allowed to have, once that visit window opened up, they were all one-on-one or one family with one coach, and there was a restriction on the number of families. Everyone had to be masked, as Coach talked about. And then even on a campus tour, we had to follow a designed ant trail around campus that you couldn't deviate from, because you had to know where everyone was at any time and who came into contact with who, and all of those things. So we just adapted, every step of the way. We've been restricted on, not only how many families we could have here at once, but how many days a week we could have visits. And so But like I said, if you just focus on what you can control, then everything you can't control, which is a lot of things, it turns out to be your advantage. And here's an example. I think by being forced to move to the use of more technology than we ever have, we are now, speaking our recruits' language a little bit better because this is a tech savvy generation more than any other, we've dealt with. And quite honestly, at 52 years old, I've had to learn how to speak their language, more than I ever have. And so I think we've turned that into our advantage. The other advantage I think that I've seen here is because there were some states that had no games in the fall, no fall football games, and pretty much every other one, if they did have games, there were limits on the numbers and everything like this. Recruits have gotten less exposure because of that, and this year more than I can remember, there's recruits that I think are falling through the cracks because they haven't been able to get out to camps. They weren't able to go to showcases. They weren't able to get on visits, the way they normally would. They weren't able to get the exposure. And, quite honestly, I feel like we've reaped some of the benefits of that by, landing some recruits that maybe otherwise we wouldn't have. All of this being said, I think I'm looking forward to things getting back to normal, certainly because there are some things you cannot accomplish in a virtual world. Recruiting is built upon trust. And while we've learned how to build trust virtually, I can tell you this, it's not as easy. It takes more time. The biggest thing I think we've realized from this is how consistency builds trust. And so even though it's virtual, if we stay consistent, we've been able to build that trust. It just takes a longer time, to do so. But I'm looking forward to things getting back to normal. But I believe we've turned this into our advantage, and with talking with other coaches, I feel like they've done the same.
Thank you, Jen and John. My next question is for Janice. Friday marked 1 year since COVID-19 began impacting college athletics. As the pandemic drags on, what do you expect competition to look like, and how does the department plan to keep athletes motivated?
Sure. Well, actually, this February, we're able to get started with some basketball competition, which obviously I like, but it was good to really just get back out there. It had been almost 12 months since we had an athletic competition on campus, but it looks very different now. Our athletes are playing with masks on. There's no spectators, but we have cardboard cutouts in the bleachers. There's guidelines that we have to follow based on the NCAA guidelines and the risk level of each sport. Athletes and coaches are being tested regularly. All of our teams are experiencing some sort of shortened conference only season. The good part is that all of our teams are experiencing something. Some of those examples are back-to-back games of the same opponent, virtual swim meets, and formats for playoffs are looking a little different. The NCAA canceled fall and winter championships. So there was just conference men's basketball this week, conference championship game they'll be playing in. But our spring sports, as of right now, the NCAA is still planning to move forward with those. So we're excited about that. And, honestly, our athletes and coaches are happy to be taking on any competition this year at all. So although it looks different, we're following all the protocols and really excited to have our athletes back out there.
Thank you, Janice. Jen, members of the Albright Student Athlete Advisory Council, called SAC, model good sportsmanship and serve as voices for student athletes on campus and in the NCAA as well. In fact, Albright SAC president serves on President Fetro's Student Advisory Council as well. As SAC's advisor, can you tell me what the group has been pursuing?
Sure. Although a lot of our events have been canceled because of COVID-19 and the inability to do those events safely, we have still managed to make an impact. For instance, since the athletes returned home before the holidays, we were really unable to do our annual Christmas gift program for Berks County Children and Youth Services. But since we were here for Halloween, we did a Halloween candy drive instead. We were able to get in our canned and non-perishable food drive right before Thanksgiving, which we also gave to Berks County Children and Youth Services. let's see here, our Albright t-shirt fundraiser will be finishing up this spring so that we can donate those proceeds to Black Women in Sport and Berks County Children and Youth Services. We'll actually be meeting virtually this week to discuss a couple more initiatives, including a senior student athlete spotlight on the SAC's Instagram page. We're looking to do a car wash come April. That's something that we typically do every year. So SAC is definitely busy. With discussing and working towards some new and old curveballs that COVID-19 has thrown us.
That's all sounds great. Thank you, Jen. Janice, as a college leader, I know that you're well-versed in the college immediate and long-term priorities, one of which is to build inclusive and equitable community in which all community members, especially the most vulnerable among us, can thrive, recognize their full potential, and contribute to the flourishing of others. Accomplishing this will take good work by everyone in the Albright community. Can you describe some of the ways athletics is working to build diversity, inclusivity, and equity among the department, teams, and individual athletes?
Sure. Some of our teams have chosen to show support in different ways to help all of our athletes feel a sense of belonging. Some have sold t-shirts and donated funds to various groups that support Black athletes. Others have their team shirts with different statements on them showing support and awareness of the everyday social inequities. Along with race, coaches and administrators are always evaluating equity among the athletic teams. Athletic policies are being reviewed to make sure that the purpose and wording is inclusive and equitable. Another example from this past fall, our department partnered with the political science department to prepare students to confidently voice their views through voting. First, we helped all our athletes through this year's somewhat confusing voting registration process. A handful of our teams and had 100% of their athletes registered to vote, which is pretty exciting. Then with help of professors, we held a webinar for our athletes to learn how to vote, what it means to vote, and how a vote is a voice that impacts local government. Coaches, administrators, and athletes participated in 3 different panel discussions on race and sport. These conversations about race for members of not only our athletes, but our entire campus community are very important, and they will continue to happen moving forward.
Thank you, Janice. And it's awesome to see so many people are working together to make sure this important priority moves forward even during the COVID-19 pandemic. Rick, let's switch gears a bit and talk about esports. For some time, esports has been the top requested activity by incoming and prospective students here at Albright. Launched last year as our first co-ed team, Albright Esports actually consists of multiple teams and is also a great complement to our popular game and simulation development athletic program. How has the program fared through the pandemic, and what does the future look like for esports here at Albright?
Yeah, Matt, esports is really a very interesting sport. When this hit our radar about 3 years ago, we viewed it as a no-brainer to add as our 24th varsity sport. Esports or gaming, it really combines tactical and teamwork skills, much like most sports, but it combines that with video games, and it creates a true 21st century varsity sport. We've had a lot of interest in these sports, and these programs continue to grow. Ironically, esports was the only varsity sport that was able to compete in the fall semester. The reason is that they have no travel. They do everything online. So they could do matches. We have a gaming room where the team meets, but realistically, if they have a good connection, they can compete from home. They can compete from their dorm. They can compete from almost anywhere. And they can compete against anyone from anywhere around the country. So there really was no need for any pandemic restrictions. So while we're really ramping up most of our sports now, esports has been able to continue all along with business as usual. And I think that's something that doesn't get recognized by a lot of people. The other part with esports is we're constantly evaluating it to see which are the right games to offer. We started off with 3 games, and we still have those same 3, but we continue to look very closely at that and see, are these the right ones? Are these the ones that are going to help us recruit and retain student athletes. So it's much like so many other things, and especially in the video world, it's very much evolving.
Thank you, Rick. Our final question before we open it up to questions from our audience is for you, Janice. What are the top fundraising priorities for Albright Athletics? And what can you tell us about the second annual Ready, Set, Roar fundraiser?
Sure. Fundraising is a constant mobilizer for athletics. As most of you already know, we were unable to host our annual red and white golf outing this past fall, which presented a hole in our fundraising efforts. On top of that, COVID has changed the way our practices and our athletic events have been happening, and added some unexpected costs to our athletics, our department at large. COVID testing, additional safety protocols, travel adjustments. Some of our teams have to take additional buses for spacing. That's just a couple of the examples that have added some cost to our operations. Despite the events of all of this, we continue to move forward, and we remain focused on recruiting, training, and planning. Our loyal donor base has once again stepped up and provided invaluable support, which we remain immensely thankful for. We also have some exciting projects, which we are currently planning and fundraising to support. As many of you know, at the top of our fundraising efforts is an expansion of our athletic facilities to include a state-of-the-art track and field. We've made excellent headway on the project by raising over $3 million to date. And this would include an 8-lane all-weather track and field, which will provide not only a place for our track team to actually practice on a track, but also host outside competitions on campus. It'll provide an additional turf field for our field sports located inside of the track. And this is essential to enhancing our student athletes' experience here on campus. It provides an additional resource for practices and games, and allows more time for academics. The facility will also add value to our campus beyond athletics, serving as a place for campus life and strengthening our community through different engagements. Another exciting advancement, which was made possible by our college leadership, was hiring our first full-time head men's and women's tennis coach. Coach Miranda Brown joined our team in January. She jumped right into work with recruiting prospective students, and she's going to help grow our tennis program again, some full rosters. And in order to do this, we'll be looking to fundraise to upgrade our tennis courts to a more collegiate standard. They need a little TLC right now. We've recently developed a case for support, which was kicked off by a generous $50,000 gift from an anonymous donor to endow the program, provide sustainable annual funding, which is great. We're looking forward to this exciting development with tennis, and we remain focused on gaining additional support as the project unfolds. But each team, esports to football, has specific needs for financial support. Our Ready, Set, Roar campaign this week will present an opportunity to engage our faithful athletic alumni and help support all of our Lions. The funding from the Ready, Set, Roar program goes to support equipment purchase, facility upgrades, tournament travel, and our end-of-year athletics banquet. For any of you that have been here, it's important for our athletes to really end the year, and we weren't able to have that in person last year either. We want all of our athletes to have the opportunity to be successful in their sport, and this campaign really helps them to have that experience and the opportunity to play. As we look towards the future, we're excited to work with our fundraising team to execute all of our vision for Albright Athletics. It's truly a team effort, and we appreciate everyone's dedicated support along the way.
Thank you so much. So now at this time, we'd like to invite you to send us your burning questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And so that we don't sit here in silence while you're doing that, we'll share a short video about the Ready, Set, Roar campaign, which is paired with the Albright Challenge in search of 750 donors for Albright.
Lions thrive together on a safe campus with dedicated faculty and staff. Lions thrive together, even at home, where we still connect.
Lions thrive together for the community in times of crisis.
Lions thrive together on and off the court.
Albright family, join us in supporting student scholarships, academic programs, and Albright athletics during the 6th annual Albright Challenge, March 15th through 19th. Because, after all,
Lions thrive together.
I certainly can say that our student athletes do thrive together here at Albright. Taking a look at our first question from the audience is going to John. What would you say the overall morale of the student athletes are on Albright campus?
Sure, Matt. Well, I certainly can't speak for all of our sports teams. I certainly have intimate knowledge of what's going on with our football playing student athletes. And I think our morale is extremely high. I mean, just to put this into context, the last time we played a game was November of 2019. That's a long time without football. And for the coaches that you see in this room and all the coaches in our athletic department, I mean, we're doing this because it's what we love to do. And when you can't compete the way you want to compete, I mean, that's a struggle, right? And our student athletes are wired the same way. And so when we came back in February for the start of the second semester, I mean, immediately I could tell our morale was much higher even than where it was in the fall. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that we could see some light at the end of the tunnel. There were plans in place to be playing games this spring, as Coach Ferry alluded to. Winter sports are competing, spring sports are competing, and there's plans for fall sports to compete this spring as well. And so while, I don't know, 70, 80% of our student body returned to campus physically, in my case, 100% of our team returned physically because they didn't want to miss the opportunity to practice, to compete, to work out with their teammates. They knew that there was a very strong possibility we were going to have games this spring based upon the planning and all of that. We're 3 weeks into, well, really 4 weeks into our spring workouts right now. And just to give you an idea, we're doing strength and conditioning every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That starts at 6 a.m. And then we're doing indoor football skill development Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. And over 4 weeks of these workouts, our on-time attendance rate is right around 98, 99% on-time attendance at 6 in the morning. And so I remember our first morning of indoor football workouts, starting at 6 a.m. And I woke up at 3:45 a.m. and I was like a kid on Christmas morning. I couldn't get back to sleep. I was so excited. And I showed up and 100% of our team was there on time. And I knew they all felt the same way I did. So everyone's just really excited to be back and doing what we love to do. And, athletes, college student athletes, they do what they do because of their passion for the sport. They absolutely positively love to play the sport that they're involved with. So to be able to do what they love to do, I mean, who doesn't have high morale, right? When you're able to do that, whatever your passion is. And so, I'm very excited about that. And the feedback I've gotten from the other coaches has been very similar to my experience.
Thank you, John. And our next question actually talks about more of what does the other rest of spring football look like? Are there any games being planned and possibly looking to be played?
Yes, sir. So right now, and obviously all of these plans are contingent upon things continuing to go in the right direction. But the plan right now is we will be able to start going outside for on-field practices in the last week of March, where we'll start practicing, 5 or 6 days a week, with equipment on, and in what I would consider like a preseason camp, type of structure, if you will. And then that will lead up to a red and white scrimmage, inter-squad scrimmage with officials. That's tentatively planned for April 18th. And then two games against conference opponents, one to be played on at Lebanon Valley on April 25th, and the second to be played at home against Alvernia on May 2nd. So 2 conference games against local opponents. I mean, Alvernia is 15 minutes from here and Lebanon Valley's 40 minutes away. And so it handles the logistic issue and things like that. And at this point, I mean, look, I'd have loved to play 5 or more games, but at this point, I think all of us are excited just to get any games. And so I'm excited to play 2 games. And, you know, the other coaches that we spoke with, you know, the head football coach at Alvernia and at Lev Valley feel the same way I do. And, you know, we're calling this the cross county championship because we have 2 adjacent counties, you know, playing, you know, each playing 2 games. And so to us, this is a championship, you know, it's a championship game. You know, both of them are. I've got 5 seniors only. Probably only 2 of them will be back, you know, in the fall of 21. The others are going to graduate, you know, so for those 3 seniors, this is their last hurrah. And so I certainly want to make this as positive experience I can for them. For everyone else, it's about preparation for our fall of 21 season and preparing ourselves to win a MAC championship.
Well, that's really exciting to hear, and we're looking forward to that competition later in the spring. Our next question from our audience is directed to Jen Willis. Our young people are being challenged emotionally during this time. How are your athletes doing, and what are you doing about it as a coach to help them out?
Sure. Well, we have the conference in general has sent a plethora of opportunities for mental health seminars. I know Misericordia hosted one. Hosted virtually a mental health symposium, which was tremendous. I know a bunch of us coaches were on there specifically. We actually, so SAC just took on and hosted for the 2nd year in a row, Minding Your Mind. It's a wonderful organization. So we had Jordan Burnham, who's a tremendous former athlete, you know, really shared his obstacles. And I know there were a ton of student athletes and again, coaches, administrators on there as well. So, and then personally, I mean, within my own team, you know, this COVID-19, the structure of the semesters, the change of everything, it's been tough on them. I've had a couple of my athletes say, hey, I'm struggling here. I would really like to speak to someone. And I directly typed up an email and responded right away, you know, getting these guys in touch with someone who can help them through this tough time. No doubt it's been tough, but you know, we have open doors and we have great resources along the way that have, you know, helped them. So yeah, those are some specific.
I just want to add a little bit to that. We have partnered with the Gable Health Center, our department, for future programming for our student athletes, you know, emotional, behavioral things that have come out of being an athlete during the pandemic. So we're excited about that partnership, and that will get started this spring for all the teams.
That's great to hear. What I can get to next here is actually a comment from our audience. Reads, as a coach and leader on campus, you are critical to the overall experience and growth of our students. Thank you for your efforts, commitment, and caring. Albright is proud of you. Signed, Brad, class of 1993.
Thanks, Brad. It's been great, I'll say, for me personally to interact with the students again in person once we returned in the fall. And, you know, I think we're fortunate because we're the closest department, I think, back to normal, maybe aside from housing. But, you know, to just interact with the students, that's why we do it. That's why we're here as a college in general, and to see their faces and, you know, help them navigate through all of this has been helpful to me.
Definitely, that's very true. This next question I have is, so how many of the 24 teams will actually be able to play during the spring semester?
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, actually, every one of them. I'm trying to think if there's an exception, and I'm not coming up with one in my head. Every team will compete. You in some form or another. And as we've mentioned several times, sometimes it looks a little bit different. And teams are like swimming has done a couple of virtual meets, so that looks different. There's not necessarily an indoor track season, but all of the indoor track athletes are members of the outdoor team, so they're competing. Everybody's doing something. We're just on the verge of finalizing most of the competitions for our fall sports teams. We literally just got the word on that on Friday from the conference office, and so that looks different. Basically, we're told you're going to play this opponent this week, and now during that week, you and that opponent have to find a date. And the issue is facilities. Just finding when you have your facility available, with them being outdoor sports, say a field hockey or a soccer. So they want to get out and play on the turf. Well, think about everything going on the turf. We have both lacrosses that are in season right now. And then field hockey, soccer will be looking to get out there. Football will be looking to get out there. Track uses it sometimes for practice. So there's heavy usage. So we just have to figure out every school's going through it, figure out when we can play. But the good is everyone will play, and that's great for our athletes because that's what they love to do. They're competitors, and ultimately competitors want to compete.
Thank you, Rick. And looks like that will wrap up the questions from our audience. And before we sign off here, I would like to thank everyone again who joined us on this Sunday. And most importantly, thank you for your generosity and support of Albright Athletics. We wish you all the best of luck moving forward.